Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bio, a solo episode this week where I am talking all about what you actually stand for and how you define your personal brand. So what are you known for right now? Maybe you've already got a niche and a solid following, or perhaps you've been so busy growing your business or progressing your career that actually you've forgotten to shake your pom-poms a little bit along the way and you're a bit unsure as to what it actually is that you want to stand for. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you'll have seen all of the various methods that have already been covered around different methods that will help you to raise your profile and increase your brand awareness, so brand you. But perhaps you've been listening and you're still a bit unsure what it is that you actually stand for. So before you actually get stuck into trying out all these different methods, it makes sense to work out how other people perceive you right now so that you can measure your return on investment in any time and perhaps money that you're going to invest on improving your brand. So first up, you may have heard it said before, but you are what Google says you are. So have you Googled yourself before? If you've done this before, it's worth doing on an incognito browser so that you can see what pops up for strangers searching you for the first time. Now, if you've got a common name, then you might need to include your location and or your business or industry in your search. So have a bit of a play around with it. Look at what comes up on page one, because page one is the main one. And you might actually want to go back and listen to the episode that we did. It was only a few weeks ago now on SEO with Andrew Armitage, because there was some really cool stuff that we were talking about there with Google, and we'll pop a link to that in the show notes. And what we were saying on that is that page one is it really, and page one's longer than it used to be, so there is quite a bit of stuff on there. Now that page one, the main page, it is the most important, as that's where people are just basically going to be hanging out stalking you, but it is worth looking at the other tabs that come up. So the tabs along the top, you've got images and you've got news and you've got videos, and these are all going to have relevant content as well, and some of this content you'll find on that first page anyway. But if you look at images, for example, and you hate some of those images, then that maybe is going to be a bit of a sign to say it's time to get some new photos out there and start using photos that you prefer. Same with video content. Is there stuff on there that is either not relevant to what you do anymore, or is really dated? You need some more modern stuff on there. And again, the same with the news as well. You know, is there plenty of recent coverage in publications that are relevant to what you want to be known for? So by doing this little Google mini audit, you're going to be able to see what's there, see what other people see, and get thinking about what your priorities are and which profile raising methods you want to take to improve your dominance on Google. Another thing to think about when looking at Google is whether you are the dominant owner of your own name. So often when we search for clients for the first time, we actually have a bit of a laugh as to what comes up. I've seen clients who share their names with authors, actors, presidents, athletes, but also the odd serial killer, which can be interesting explaining to a client who's never Googled themselves before. But it is helpful to see who else has your name and assess your potential for taking the top spots on Google. Now, if you share your name with people who are way more famous than you, then it might be a bit of an opportunity actually to take stock. So if you're John Smith, then you're unlikely to ever be able to be the top dog, John Smith. But there are different ways that you can tackle this. So if you're a married woman, for example, then you may choose to retain your maiden name for professional purposes. You might go double-barreled, so that gives you a couple of options. But if you are not get married or single or a guy, then maybe think about having your middle name included. So if you've got a middle name or even the initial of your middle name, that is just going to make your name a little bit different. If you take one of these approaches, the key thing, though, is to be consistent across everything. Someone that I was speaking to recently actually had 3 different surnames in current use, which was obviously then splitting out her content and her presence. So really important to make a decision, stick with it, be consistent, and use it absolutely everywhere. Also, when you're doing your Google searching, you're going to get a feel for whether you're happy with what is there. Some people are not happy with what comes up in their Google search. This could be because literally nothing comes up, or it might be that some old news that maybe isn't too positive pops up. A friend of mine, I remember, was involved in an employee tribunal claim that he and his business lost, and an unpleasant news story was the top search link to his name. Not ideal, but he was aware of it, and his strategy was very much to knock that news down by releasing loads of really positive stuff and making sure that that was lower and lower down Google. Now, time obviously helps with that when things become dated, but you can be proactive in ensuring that that happens sooner. Whatever comes up or doesn't on Google, this is an opportunity to ensure that you start getting consistent. The key thing is that hardly anyone scrolls past page 1 these days, so it won't take long with a little bit of effort. Now, if nothing comes up, you've got work to do, but it can be as simple as posting regularly on open social media profiles. So there's a few thoughts around the Google side of things. Another thing to think about is invisible PR. Have you heard that term before? It's what people think or say about you when you're not in the room. Now, this can often be made up of a series of small actions that maybe on their own seem a bit inconsequential, but add up to the view that someone is going to have of you. And this is going to cover your online and your offline activity. You've probably heard that phrase about being good to the people on your way up, as you're never going to know who you're going to meet on your way down. And I can relate to this so much because I remember being a fresh-faced young graduate a long time ago, and some more senior members of staff being quite rude, quite dismissive towards me. And on several occasions, I think actually it would be behaviour that they would get sacked for these days. Now, at the time, I just bit my tongue and noted it. But fast forward 5-6 years when I was in a more senior role at that organisation, and I was at head office by that point as well. And the way that they behaved towards me when our paths crossed was very different. They treated me completely different. But did I forget how they'd made me feel age 22? Did I? Heck. So that was interesting. Now, another way to bring this concept to life is to think about famous people that we think that we know, but probably don't, but we will have a view on them. Now, I do this exercise in a workshop that I run where I show famous faces and get the audience to shout out words that they associate with these personalities. I always try and have a few very topical names. So ones that I would be using in this workshop today would be people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Kate Middleton, Oprah. And as I'm saying these names, you are probably thinking about these people. You will all know all of those names. And you will have words that totally spring to mind as I am going through those names. And I can probably guess some of the words that are going through your head as I said each of those names. So Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Kate Middleton, and Oprah. So maybe some of the words that you would associate with them are very rich, crazy, elegant, legend, classy, orange, regal, accomplished, and I would bet you £100 that I know who you are thinking of on my list as I read those words out. And it's powerful, right? So it shows that it works, and it shows that your invisible PR is really important. It's linked to how you decide to define your brand. So you want to know what your strengths are and what you want to be known for, because you don't want people calling you orange, or maybe you do, I don't know. But it's really important to get clear on what it is that you want to stand for. So let's move on to talking about how you define your personal brand. I actually prefer the term professional profile, but personal branding is more widely understood. I just think it's got really negative connotations and that people often think about social media. But for me, as you'll know if you listen to the show regularly, it's so much bigger than just social media. I did actually look up some definitions for personal branding, and the one that I came up with that I thought made the most sense was personal branding is the process of creating a brand identity for a person or a company. So as the name suggests, it's a brand for you or for your business. Now, if you work for a business, it's probably going to have a defined set of company values, which you may or may not be able to rattle off and may or may not see in yourself. But you have your own values, regardless as to what the companies are. And maybe if you own your own company, they're going to be very, very much aligned. But it is worth thinking about what your values are and spending a bit of time defining that and what you want to be known for in front of your target audience. So what actually makes up this professional profile or personal brand? Well, I would suggest that you think about the following questions, reflect a little, and try to answer them. So what makes you you? What is your niche? And how are you excelling within your industry? All your thoughts on these questions are going to help you to start to bring your personality to life when you are carrying out profile raising activities. Another thing that will help you once you have established the answers to those questions is to focus on knowing your own values. Now, values are going to massively help you to establish your sense of purpose and direction for your personal brand. They act as guideposts that assist you in evaluating choices in your life, and they're going to drive you and help you to commit to important things in your life. Now, often the reason that people are unhappy at work is because their values no longer align with the work that they're doing. And when you're crafting your personal brand, you must understand your core values because they are the heart of who you are. A great way to identify what you want to stand for and what brand you looks like is to be super clear on these values. So you need to consider what's important to you, as we all have different values and motivations. Now, again, you can ask yourself a few simple questions. So things like, what is important to me? What motivates me? And actually, what are my values? The answers to these questions are going to help you to work out what you stand for and what your messaging could be. So defining your values is a worthwhile exercise because they have a massive influence on your behaviour and your attitude. You're going to find loads of exercises online that will help you to identify your values, and it is worth doing this. I have an exercise that I do as part of a corporate workshop where I get participants to think about what their values are and to define them. And what we do is we start off with a list of it's a huge list, maybe 60, 70 different values. And we get everybody in the room to identify which ones do they identify with, what do they feel strongly about, what's calling to them. Now, out of this list of 70, you probably get people choosing, some of them 40. They have massive lists, but some people are pretty concise from the off and have maybe, 10, 12, something like that. So we do that. We then have a conversation about it, and I then challenge them to cut their list in half. And then we keep doing rounds of cutting the list down until we get to the point where they've had to really, really think hard about which are the values that they do want to choose as being the most important to them. And I try and challenge them to get down to 5. Because the thing with values is if you prioritize everything, then are you really prioritizing anything? So 5 that are going to be your guiding North Star, that is the way to go. And I think the key thing here is that once you've thought about all of these things that make up your brand, so, we've spoken about Google, what does Google say about you? And actually you may or may not agree with what Google has thrown up about you right now. Once you have thought about your invisible PR and what people are saying about you when you're not in the room, and how people would describe you, and then done the values exercise, you've got quite a bit of information from all of those things that are going to help you to identify what it is that is your brand. Another tool that would be really helpful for you to identify and define your brand is to use the scorecard that we often talk about on the show and that is always in the show notes for the show. So this is going to help you to identify where you're at right now in terms of your brand and give you a score for each element of your profile. So if you've not already done this before, then please do have a go. The link will be in the show notes, and that's going to give you a starting point as well. So I hope you found this episode useful. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback, and tune in on Thursday for the Take Action episode linked to this show. See you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you're serious about growing your profile, take our free profile assessment quiz to see where you're at right now and get hints and tips on how to improve your score. You'll find the link to the quiz in the show notes. If you've enjoyed the episode, it would be mint if you'd subscribe, like, and leave a review.